A single sugar packet, tossed in defiance at Leonardo DiCaprio, plunged our family into a nightmare. We had no idea a celebrity could exact such a terrifying, life-altering lesson. The restaurant was my wife Sarah's choice. One of those dimly lit, ridiculously expensive Italian places in the city where the waiters wear starched white jackets and the menu doesn't have prices, which is code for, if you have to ask, you can't afford it. We could, but only just. It was her 40th birthday, a milestone that deserved more than a cake from the supermarket and a bottle of mid-range Prosecco at home. It deserved linen tablecloths, a sommelier, and a complete escape from our normal lives. For me and Sarah, it was heaven. For our 13-year-old daughter, Chloe, it was a high-security prison where the only form of torture was the complete and utter lack of Wi-Fi. "I don't see why I had to come," she muttered for the 5th time, her face illuminated by the defiant blue glow of her phone screen under the table. "This is literally so boring. The breadsticks taste like old bread." "They're called grissini, honey," Sarah said, her smile tight but unwavering. She was determined not to let Chloe's teenage angst derail her birthday. "And you're here because we're a family, and we're celebrating your mother." I reached across the table and squeezed Sarah's hand. "She looks beautiful, doesn't she, Chloe?" Chloe glanced up from her phone for a fraction of a second. "Yeah, sure." Her eyes immediately darted back down. Her thumbs started moving at a furious pace, probably complaining to her friends about her boomer parents and their ancient rituals. I felt that familiar surge of parental frustration, a hot wave of anger mixed with helplessness. We were trying so hard to give her everything, to create these perfect family memories, and all she could do was retreat into that glowing rectangle in her hands. The evening was teetering on the edge of disaster, held together only by my wife's sheer force of will. And then the energy in the room shifted. It was subtle at first. A hush fell over the tables nearest the entrance. The low murmur of conversation didn't stop, but it changed pitch, becoming a series of excited, discreet whispers. A waiter, holding a tray of drinks, actually faltered in his step. "What's going on?" Sarah whispered to me, her eyes wide. I followed her gaze toward the entrance. A man was being led to a secluded corner booth by the maitre d'. He wasn't dressed ostentatiously, just a simple dark sweater and a baseball cap pulled down low, but there was no mistaking him. It was the kind of face you've seen 1,000 times, on movie posters, in magazines, in your dreams if you were a teenager in the 90s. The jawline, the eyes, the entire aura of quiet, unbothered charisma. "No way," I breathed, squeezing Sarah's hand tighter. "Is that—" Sarah's mouth formed a perfect O. "Oh my God, it is. It's Leonardo DiCaprio." For the first time all night we had Chloe's attention. The name had pierced through her TikTok-addled consciousness. "Who?" she asked, finally looking up from her phone with a frown. "Leonardo DiCaprio," Sarah repeated, her voice a reverent whisper. "From Titanic? The Wolf of Wall Street?" Chloe squinted toward the corner booth. Her face contorted into a look of profound disappointment, the kind you'd normally reserve for finding out your favorite ice cream flavor has been discontinued. "That old guy, that's him," she said, her voice a pitch too loud. A woman at the next table shot us a disapproving glare. "Chloe, hush," I hissed. "Show some respect." "Respect for what?" she scoffed. "He's just some actor? He looks like my friend's dad?" She let out a dramatic, exaggerated sigh and slumped back in her chair, picking up a sugar packet and starting to tear at its edges. "You guys are so cringe. Freaking out over some random celebrity. I wanted the floor to swallow me whole. My wife's perfect birthday dinner was now being tainted by our daughter's public display of adolescent scorn. But it was about to get so much worse. A few minutes later, Mr. DiCaprio stood up from his table and began walking toward the back of the restaurant, presumably to the restroom. His path would take him directly past our table. My heart started hammering in my chest. Sarah was practically vibrating with excitement, smoothing her hair and sitting up straighter. I just prayed Chloe wouldn't say anything else. As he drew level with us, he gave a polite, almost imperceptible nod in our general direction, a small acknowledgement of the other patrons. It was a classy, subtle gesture, and that's when Chloe did it. She looked right at him, a smirk playing on her lips. "Heard you only date people under 25, she said, her voice dripping with teenage snark. Then with a flick of her wrist she launched the sugar she'd been crumbling from the packet. The tiny white granules arched through the air in the dim light, a miniature sparkling cloud of pure disrespect, dusting the sleeve of his dark sweater. He stopped. He didn't flinch. He didn't react angrily. He just stopped, dead in his tracks. The entire world seemed to shrink to the few feet of space between our table and this global superstar. He slowly turned his head, and his eyes, the piercing blue eyes that had captivated millions on screen, moved past me, past my horrified wife, and locked directly onto my daughter. The polite, distant celebrity was gone. In his place was a man with an expression I couldn't read at all, and it was utterly terrifying. The silence that followed was heavier than a tombstone. It pressed down on us, suffocating the air in my lungs. My wife, Sarah, looked like a porcelain doll that had been dropped, her face frozen in a mask of pure, unadulterated horror. Every other diner in our vicinity had suddenly found their bread plate to be the most fascinating object in the universe, pretending not to watch the unfolding car crash at our table. Chloe, for her part, just sat there, that smug, defiant smirk still playing on her lips, completely oblivious to the gravity of what she'd just done. Leonardo DiCaprio didn't speak. He simply held my daughter's gaze for a long, agonizing moment. His expression wasn't angry or offended or even amused. It was something else entirely. It was analytical. He looked at her the way a biologist might look at a strange new insect under a microscope, with a detached, piercing curiosity that was far more unnerving than any outburst of rage could have been. Slowly, deliberately, he lowered his eyes to the sleeve of his sweater. He brushed at the sugar granules with 2 fingers, a calm, precise motion. He then looked at the white dust on his fingertips for a beat, as if contemplating its very existence. The restaurant, the world, my wife's 40th birthday, it all hung suspended in that single, silent moment. Then he looked up again, but this time his gaze fell on me. The intensity was startling. It felt like he was looking straight through my skull, cataloging every failure I'd ever had as a father. His voice, when it came, was so low I almost didn't hear it. It was a soft, gravelly murmur, devoid of any emotion. "She has a phone, I assume?" he asked. The question was so bizarre, so out of left field that I could only manage a stupid, strangled nod. He nodded back, a single, sharp dip of his chin. "Of course she does." He then gave the faintest hint of a smile, a chilling little quirk of his lips that didn't reach his eyes. "Enjoy your evening." And with that he turned and continued walking toward the back of the restaurant as if nothing had happened. He didn't look back. The entire exchange couldn't have lasted more than 20 seconds, but the temperature at our table had dropped by 30 degrees. The spell was broken. Sarah let out a shaky breath that sounded like a sob. "I can't believe you did that," she whispered, her voice trembling with a mixture of fury and shame. "What?" Chloe said, finally breaking her defiant pose, a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. "It was funny. Lighten up." "Funny?" I exploded, my voice a harsh whisper. "You think that was funny, Chloe? You assaulted someone. You humiliated us. You ruined your mother's birthday." "I didn't assault him. I threw sugar. Get a grip, Dad." She rolled her eyes, but the bravado was starting to crack. She'd expected a reaction, but the one she got, that quiet, strange intensity, had clearly unnerved her. We didn't stay for dessert. I threw my credit card on the table, and we fled the restaurant, a cloud of shame following us out into the cool night air. The car ride home was a symphony of suffocating silence, punctuated only by Sarah's quiet sniffles from the passenger seat. Chloe had her headphones on, her ultimate defense mechanism, staring out the window and pretending she was in a music video instead of the family doghouse. When we got home, the hammer came down. "Give me your phone," I said, my voice flat. "What? No! You can't do that!" she shrieked. "I can, and I am. You're grounded for a month. No phone, no friends over, no anything. You can go to school, and you can come home. That's it. Now, the phone." Tears of rage streamed down her face as she slammed the phone into my palm. "I hate you. You're ruining my life because of some stupid, washed-up actor." She stomped up the stairs and slammed her bedroom door so hard a picture frame rattled in the hallway. I collapsed onto the sofa, the phone feeling heavy and toxic in my hand. Sarah came and sat beside me, her birthday forgotten, her face etched with worry. "What was that all about?" Why did he ask if she had a phone? "I don't know," I admitted, rubbing my temples. "It was just weird. The whole thing was weird." We sat in silence for another hour before Sarah, exhausted and defeated, went up to bed. I stayed on the couch, stewing in my own anger and parental guilt. I stared at Chloe's confiscated phone on the coffee table. The screen was dark. I should just turn it off and put it away. But his question echoed in my mind. "She has a phone, I assume." As if on cue, the screen lit up. A notification appeared. It wasn't a text from a friend or an alert from Instagram. It was from an app I'd never seen before, its icon a simple, elegant letter L, stylized to look like a key. The notification itself was just 3 words. Lesson 1 initiated. My blood ran cold. I snatched the phone and tried to swipe it open, but Chloe's passcode screen wouldn't accept her usual combination. I tried her birthday, my birthday, every number sequence I could think of. Nothing. As I tried the last one, the number pad vanished. The screen went black for a second, then flickered back to life, displaying a single, stark, white message against the dark background. Access denied. The curriculum is for the student only. My first instinct was pure, unadulterated panic. My mind raced through a dozen nightmare scenarios, each more absurd than the last. Had he hacked her phone? Was this some kind of elaborate celebrity prank? Or was it something far more sinister? I pictured shadowy organizations and black market data brokers. The logical part of my brain was screaming at me that this was impossible, that a movie star wouldn't and couldn't orchestrate something so bizarre so quickly. But the cold dread coiling in my stomach didn't care about logic. I sprinted upstairs and pounded on Chloe's door. "Chloe, open this door right now." The door flew open. Her face was tear-streaked and defiant. "What do you want? Come to yell at me some more?" "Ah." I held up the phone, my hand shaking slightly. "What is this? This L app? What is lesson 1? She stared at the screen, her eyes widening in genuine confusion. "I've never seen that before in my life. I don't know what you're talking about." She was a teenager, a master of deception and evasion, but I knew when she was lying. And this wasn't it. The fear in her eyes was real. She reached for the phone, but I pulled it back. "Let me see it," she demanded. "No. You're grounded, remember?" The words sounded hollow even to my own ears. This was beyond grounding. This was something else. "Go to bed." She stared at me, then at the phone, then back at me, a torrent of emotions warring on her face. Finally, she gave a defeated sob and slammed the door shut again. I went back downstairs, my heart hammering against my ribs. I spent the next hour trying everything I could think of. I tried to factory reset the phone, to force it into recovery mode. Nothing worked. It was a brick, displaying only that taunting, cryptic message. Access denied. The curriculum is for the student only. The next morning was tense. Chloe came downstairs for school with dark circles under her eyes. She didn't speak a word, just grabbed a granola bar and sat at the kitchen island, staring into space. The smug bravado from the night before was completely gone, replaced by a quiet, anxious energy. When it was time to go, she looked at me, her voice small. Can I have my phone back?" "No," I said, my voice firm despite the churning in my gut. "Absolutely not." "But Dad, I need it for school, and to talk to my friends. You can't just cut me off from the world. You should have thought about that before you acted like a spoiled brat in that restaurant." The words were harsh, but I was scared. Giving her the phone felt like handing her a loaded gun without knowing how it worked. Her face crumpled. "Please," she whispered. It was the first time in years she had said that word to me without a heavy dose of sarcasm. It broke my heart a little, but I held my ground. "No, Chloe." She went to school defeated. The moment she was out the door, I called our phone provider. I spent 45 minutes on hold, only to be told by a bored-sounding representative that there was no unusual activity on the account, and that, short of reporting the phone stolen, they couldn't do anything to bypass a user's lock screen. It was a dead end. I considered going to the police, but what would I say? "Excuse me, officer, I think Leonardo DiCaprio put a mysterious app on my daughter's phone that's talking about lessons." They'd laugh me out of the precinct. They'd think I was a lunatic. Throughout the day, the phone remained inert. Then, at exactly 3:15 p.m., just as school was letting out, the screen lit up again. This time the notification was different. Lesson 1. Humility. The student has failed to attend. A remedial exercise has been assigned. Please consult the family's primary bank account. I stared at the words, my blood turning to ice. My hands trembled as I fumbled for my own phone, my fingers barely able to punch in the passcode for my banking app. I logged in, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my chest. The balance loaded, and my world tilted on its axis. Our checking account, the one we used for bills, for groceries, for everything, was empty. $0 and 0 cents. I frantically clicked on the transaction history. There was only one entry, made just a few minutes ago. A wire transfer for the entire balance, every last penny, to an anonymous charity. The transaction note contained a single, chilling sentence. "A donation has been made in Chloe's name to the Fund for Underprivileged Children Who Appreciate a Good Meal." I stumbled back, gasping for air. the phone slipping from my nerveless fingers and clattering to the floor. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't a hack. This was a targeted, calculated attack. He hadn't just locked her out of her phone, he had reached into the heart of our lives and squeezed. Every dollar we had for the mortgage, for the car payment, for food, was gone. The front door opened, and Chloe walked in, dropping her backpack on the floor. "Anything?" she asked, her voice hopeful, looking at her phone sitting on the coffee table. I couldn't speak. I could only point a shaking finger at my own phone on the floor. She picked it up, her brow furrowed in confusion as she looked at the open banking app. I watched her face as the reality of what she was seeing sank in. The color drained from her cheeks. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Her eyes, wide with disbelief and terror, slowly lifted from the screen to meet mine. Just then, her phone on the coffee table buzzed. We both jumped. The screen lit up with a new message, as if it knew we were both watching. "Remedial exercise complete. Lesson 2 will commence tomorrow at 0800 hours. Attendance is not optional." That night's sleep was a forgotten luxury. Sarah and I sat at the kitchen table until the early hours of the morning, cycling through waves of panic, rage, and utter disbelief. We called the bank's fraud department, but the transfer was authenticated and irreversible. It was a legitimate donation. It was clean. It was untraceable. We were broke. "We have to go to the police," Sarah said for the 10th time, her voice raw. "And say what?" I shot back, the stress making my voice sharp. "That a movie star emptied our bank account because our daughter threw sugar at him? They'll commit us. There's no proof linking him to this. It's a ghost in the machine." The truth was, I was terrified. This wasn't just a hacker. This was someone with immense power and resources, someone who could move silently through the digital world and financially cripple an ordinary family with a few keystrokes. This was a man who could command armies of lawyers and publicists. We were ants. He was a boot hanging over our heads. The next morning, Chloe was a ghost. She didn't eat, didn't speak. She just sat, staring at her inert phone on the counter. At 7:59 a.m., we were all gathered around it like it was a ticking bomb. Exactly as the clock ticked over to 8:00 a.m., the screen lit up. Lesson 2. Consequence. A vehicle has been dispatched to your location. The student will be collected in 10 minutes. She will work to repay the funds misappropriated from her family. A uniform has been provided. A cold knot of fear tightened in my stomach. No, absolutely not. You're not going anywhere. Just then, we heard the low rumble of a vehicle pulling up outside. I peered through the blinds. A plain black van with no markings was parked at our curb. My blood ran cold. This had gone too far. This was verging on kidnapping. "That's it," I said, grabbing my keys. "We're leaving. We'll go to a hotel. We'll figure this out." But Chloe didn't move. She stood up, her face pale but resolute. "No, Dad. Chloe, don't be ridiculous. You're not getting in that van." "I have to," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "I did this. I caused this. All of it. I was horrible to you and Mom. I was disrespectful and arrogant to him. I thought it was funny to be cruel. But it's not. It's just ugly." She looked from my face to Sarah's, her eyes welling with tears. "I have to fix it." Before we could protest further, she walked to the front door. On the porch was a simple cardboard box. She opened it. Inside was a plain gray boiler suit, a pair of sturdy work boots, and a simple baseball cap, the kind you see on janitorial staff. Without a word, she took the box and went to her room. 5 minutes later, she came back down, dressed in the uniform. She looked small and lost in the drab gray fabric, but she stood tall. She hugged Sarah tightly. "I love you, Mum. I'm so sorry about your birthday." Then she turned to me. "I'm sorry, Dad." She walked out the front door and down the driveway toward the van. The side door slid open. I couldn't see who was inside. She climbed in without looking back, and the door slid shut. The van pulled away from the curb and disappeared down the street. I have never felt so powerless in my entire life. All day, the house was silent. Sarah and I barely spoke, lost in our own private hells of worry. Chloe's phone remained on the counter, dark and silent. There were no updates, no messages, just a crushing, terrifying void. Just after 5 p.m., the van returned. It pulled up to the curb, and Chloe got out. She was covered in dirt and sweat, her face smudged with grime. She looked utterly exhausted, but as she walked up the driveway, I saw something in her eyes I hadn't seen in years. Clarity. She walked into the house and dropped a single crumpled envelope onto the kitchen table before collapsing into a chair. "I spent the day working at a soup kitchen downtown," she said, her voice raspy. The one we donated to. I washed dishes. I mopped floors. I served food to people who had nothing. People who were grateful for a piece of bread. The grissini I called old bread. That would have been a feast for them. I picked up the envelope. Inside was a cashier's check. It was for the exact amount that had been taken from our account, and stapled to it was a simple, printed receipt from the charity, confirming our donation had been received and put to use. We all stared at the check, the silence thick with unspoken emotion. Chloe's phone on the counter lit up one last time. We all looked at it. Final lesson. Empathy. Curriculum complete. The screen flickered. The Mysterious L app was gone. The lock screen was gone. It was just her normal home screen, her friends' faces and silly app icons staring back at us. It was over. That night, Chloe came and sat with us on the couch. There were no phones, no distractions. "He was there," she said quietly. "Not in the kitchen, but I saw him. He was in the back office, on the phone, working. He wasn't there for a photo op. Nobody even knew he was there. He was just helping." She looked down at her hands, which were red and raw from scrubbing pots. "I get it now," she whispered. We never talked about it again. The money was back in our account the next day. Life, on the surface, returned to normal. But something had fundamentally shifted in our family, and in Chloe. The snark and sullenness were replaced by a quiet thoughtfulness. She started volunteering, of her own accord, at that same soup kitchen every other weekend. She was kinder, more present, more human. He hadn't just taught her a lesson. He had given her a gift. The terrifying, surreal, and deeply unorthodox gift of perspective. And for that, in the strangest way possible, I will forever be grateful.